Today, we're diving into the stories of history's most formidable fighters. We're going to go way beyond the myths to really understand the genius, the grit, and that sheer force of will that actually forges a legend. So what is it? What's that secret ingredient that elevates a great fighter into a true legend? Is it just about the number of battles they've won, or the enemies they've taken down, or is it something deeper, something you can't quite put your finger on? That's the big question we're tackling today. We're going to be looking at some absolute titans who completely dominated their eras. I'm talking about a masterless samurai from feudal Japan, an undefeated general from Arabia, and a revolutionary king from southern Africa. These are names that still echo with power, centuries later. So let's get into it.
All right, first up, let's talk about those whose names are basically synonymous with their weapon of choice. These are the warriors who took their skill to such a high level, they practically became forces of nature themselves. First on the list, Miyamoto Musashi. This guy was an undefeated duelist who fought over 60 times and never lost. His game changer was a radical two-sword style that completely flipped traditional samurai combat on its head. But his genius wasn't just physical. Oh no! In his most famous duel against Sasaki Kojiro, Musashi showed he was a master of psychological warfare. Get this, he showed up late on purpose, then carved a massive wooden sword out of a boat oar and used the morning sun to blind his opponent right before striking him down in a single blow. That's not just fighting, that's pure, unconventional brilliance.
Now let's switch gears from tactical genius to just sheer, overwhelming force. In the Battle of Muta, a single man was so ferocious, so powerful, that he shattered this many swords in the heat of combat. 9 of them.
And that man was Khalid ibn al-Walid, who became known as the Sword of Allah. He fought in over 100 battles, and never, not once, was he defeated. At Muta, he was facing an army of 200,000 with just 3,000 of his own men. You'd think retreat was the only option, right? Nope. Instead, he used clever tactics to make his small army seem much larger, saving them from total annihilation. His power was so immense that only one type of sword, a broad Yemeni blade, could actually survive his attack.
But you know, victory isn't always about being the strongest person on the field. Sometimes it's about being the smartest and being willing to break all the rules. Now we're going to look at the strategists who won by thinking completely outside the box.
Okay, imagine this for a second. You've led your small army across the sea to invade a new land. You are outnumbered more than 10 to 1. Your soldiers are terrified. What do? Well, if your name is Tariq ibn Ziyad, you burn your own ships. You make retreat literally impossible.
With the flames from his own fleet rising into the sky behind them, Tariq gave one of the most powerful speeches in all of military history. He told his men there was only one of 2 outcomes, victory or death, and that audacious act lit a fire in his army. His 7,000 warriors fought a force of 100,000 for 8 straight days, and they crushed them, paving the way for an 800-year reign in Andalusia.
Now here's how a classic tactic was used to stop a seemingly unstoppable force. The Mongol army had laid waste to pretty much everything from China to Baghdad. Nobody could beat them. And then they ran into Baibars at the Battle of Ain Jalut. He used a feigned retreat, sending a small force to attack and then pretend to flee. This lured the overconfident Mongols into a narrow valley where his main army was lying in wait. The trap was sprung perfectly, and it handed the Mongols their first major defeat in history, stopping their westward expansion dead in its tracks.
Some warriors aren't just remembered for their skill or their strategy, but for these incredible moments of pure, unbelievable bravery, where a single person held the line against absolutely impossible odds.
I want you to meet Marcus Cassius Sceva, a Roman Centurion. During a siege, his position was overrun, leaving him to defend a breach in the wall almost entirely by himself. His shield was so riddled with arrows, we're talking over 200 of them, that it became its own spiky barrier. He was blinded in one eye by another arrow, and still, he fought on, cutting down dozens of enemies in brutal close-quarters combat until reinforcements could finally arrive. His commander, a guy you may have heard of, named Julius Caesar, famously said that Sceva's courage was worth an entire cohort of soldiers.
Okay, let's fast forward 2,000 years to World War I. A single soldier, Alvin York, was tasked with taking out a German machine gun nest. He didn't just take out one, he silenced 35 of them.
And while he was taking down those guns, he also single-handedly killed 25 enemy soldiers who charged him with bayonets, using his pistol, with the same calm, deadly precision he'd learned hunting back in the forests of Tennessee.
And after all of that, here comes the climax. A German officer surrendered the remaining soldiers to him. All alone, Alvin York marched 132 prisoners back to the American lines, one man capturing an entire company. It's truly one of the most incredible individual feats in all of modern warfare.
And for our final section, we're looking at the leaders who didn't just win battles, they changed the very nature of war itself. These are the architects who redesigned armies and completely rewrote the rules of engagement.
Shaka Zulu transformed his people from a small tribe into a dominant empire, and it all started with a simple weapon innovation. He replaced the long, flimsy throwing spear with the ikwa, a short, deadly stabbing spear. This one change forced his warriors into disciplined, up-close and personal combat. He combined that with his famous bullhorn formation and a brutal training regimen that made his army the most feared force in southern Africa.
Salah al-Din faced the largest crusader army ever assembled. He didn't meet them head-on. No, his tactical genius was to use the terrain and the elements as his greatest weapons. He lured them into a dry, waterless area by first seizing the only freshwater lake. Then he had his troops set fire to the dry grass, choking the crusaders with smoke and heat under a blistering July sun. By the time the battle actually began, the crusader army was already defeated, exhausted, dehydrated, and demoralized. It was an absolute masterclass in strategy that led to the liberation of Jerusalem.
And then you have Simo Häyhä, the deadliest sniper in history. During the Winter War of 1939, he racked up over 500 kills in just 100 days. And his great innovation was simplicity. He actually refused to use a telescopic scope because it could glint in the sun and give away his position. He used only his rifle's iron sights. He'd pack snow in front of his rifle to hide the muzzle flash, and even kept snow in his mouth to stop his breath from creating a telltale vapor in the cold. He was basically a ghost, and to the Soviets, he was just the White Death.
So, we've seen duelists, generals, innovators, and lone heroes. They're from different centuries, different cultures, and they fought in completely different ways. So let's circle all the way back to our original question. What is the common thread here?
In the end, it's pretty clear it's never just one thing. It's this powerful combination of qualities. You've got the unflinching courage of a Scalabai holding the line, the tactical innovation of a Baibars or a Salah al-Din, turning the tables on a superior foe, and maybe, above all else, an indomitable will, that absolute refusal to accept defeat, whether that means burning your ships or fighting on after being blinded in one eye.
We've looked at some of the most incredible fighters history has ever known. But let's be honest, the debate is far from over. Based on what you've seen, who stands out to you? I'll leave you with that question. Thanks for joining.